and I decided to get my customs broker license while I was at Descartes. I passed the second time, so I'm super grateful for that. That test is definitely a feat. I started piquing an interest once I started understanding a little bit more about trade, and it did come very easily to me, whether or not that was from listening to it growing up.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Simply Trade podcast. And today's show is going to be very different. And I've been hinting a lot about this in the past few episodes. It's just I've been wanting to personally, my goal has been to try and get some stories out there and some just different episodes that are not just always dealing with the tariffs and trade situation and politics and blah, blah, blah and all that. So, I had actually at the ICPA annual conference in Orlando this year in March, I ran into, well, I didn't run into actually, there was this young lady that was talking to Anik and Chris here at the office about trade, and about our business and our training company, et cetera. And then Anik called me over. He's like, "Hey, Lalo," I don't know why she called me over, but I went over and I looked at her name and I was like, okay, well, I'll let her keep on talking. And her voice sounded very familiar. And I was like, oh, I think I know her. And then so there was a pause in the conversation and said, I think I know your parents, or I don't know exactly how I broke the ice. So I said, are your parents Ron and Jolie? And she's like, yeah, my mom's here, etc. So it's really exciting. So the whole Lackey family is here in our show. So we've got, for all of those of you that are probably as old as I am, or in the previous generation before AI, y'all may remember Customs Info, the software that is, to me, it was the original one. I don't care if it was or not, but to me, it was the original tariff, listed all the tariff codes and gave you all the cross references between other countries, et cetera. We'll let them talk about that here, but they exited out of that and they sold that business to Descartes. That's who runs it right now. And coincidentally enough, you go to customsinfo.com, it's still there. They didn't rebrand it or anything, which is cool. But so we have Ron Lackey and Jolie Calloway Lackey, that were all running that business, and remember meeting such great folks there, and really had a really good relationship. And if it comes up or not, I don't know. But I was telling Jolie at the ICPA of this weird situation when my software company, got bought out by another software company, and how strict they were on me talking to them. And I guess apologies right now if y'all felt that I suddenly cut you all off when we were bought out by another company, but that was not my doing. But anyway, so so now we have Madison Lackey as well. She's their daughter, and so all worlds collide here, which is kind of weird. So if you're watching the YouTube video, you're seeing me wearing a cap from Cal Poly and my proud dad Cal Poly shirt, because she also graduated from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and my kids both graduated from there. So I don't know, it's kind of weird how all of this almost comes together and almost parallel. But Ron, Jolie, Madison, thank you for coming on our show, and welcome to the Simply Trade podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So, Madison, tell me, I'll start with you. Just let me know, so when we were talking, you said you were originally, when you graduated from college, you were not really in trade. You decided to take the broker's exam and you passed. Congratulations. And then so what did your parents push you into trade? What's going on with that?
No, actually, so I wasn't interested in trade at all. Growing up, it's definitely very complex, and so I didn't really know what they did growing up. But I actually, when I was at Cal Poly, I started working for a professor who was actually the U.S. Grains Council, for China. So he was helping move all the grain back and forth between the US and China. And so I took one of his classes, and it was an international trade marketing class. And a lot of the terms I knew, and I actually breezed through the class, and the professor asked me to be his assistant. And so I was helping him come up with lectures and grading papers, that sort of thing. And that's where my interest in international trade peaked again. And I started understanding like maybe a little bit more about what my parents did in that realm. And so that summer I had an internship with Cypress where I was working on AI documentation. I got a little bit of a lowdown of what Wise Tech does in the trade space. And then that's kind of what piqued my interest again in trade. I really liked working for Cypress and Wise Tech. It was a great company to work for. And then I started, after I graduated from California Polytechnic, I started working at Descartes as an implementation specialist on CI Manager. And I worked with a lot of brokers, working with a lot of clients that were working with massive amounts of data and tariffs. And I decided to get my customs broker license while I was at Descartes. And I passed the second time, so I'm super, super grateful for that. That test is definitely a feat. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. So it wasn't pushed. It was more, I started piquing an interest once I started understanding a little bit more about trade, and it did come very easily to me, whether or not that was from listening to it growing up or.
Yeah. No, I was telling your mom at ICPA that I remember, I mean, obviously it's my memory may be a little foggier now, but I told her, I remember you may have actually brought Maddie down and did the kids camp at one of the ICPAs and running around with those kids all over the place there with their kids camp. And I said that I guess that you were introducing her to trade back then.
That's right. You had a good memory because we brought both our daughters, Madison and our younger one, Morgan, to those camps. So good memory.
Yeah, that was funny because I don't know. I for some reason, I don't know why I thought I remembered that. But anyway, Ron, so let me ask you, how in the world did you get into trade? I mean, how did you decide I'm gonna make myself a software product that does tariff classification? Well, actually, the whole tariff thing. So how'd that come about?
So it's really an interesting story, and it's not so much about me, but more about customs info. In Salt Lake City, there was a guy named Bruce Fuglia. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a LexisNexis rep, and he was selling to attorneys. And Lalo, do you remember the old blue ruling books?
Yes.
So not many people know this, but WordPerfect was also founded in Utah. And at the same time that WordPerfect was coming out, they were still, the customs attorneys and the customs brokers were still getting these blue books. And one day, an attorney asked Bruce, said, "Hey, can you put this book into WordPerfect so I can go in and just do a keyword search?" So he recruited all of the neighbors, and they manually would type those rulings into WordPerfect, and that's how Customs Info got started. But we fast forward to your question. So Customs Info had a blue chip customer list, and KPMG bought Customs Info, and you have this small little family oriented company, and now all of a sudden in this big four accounting firm, and it was struggling a little bit. I had just come off the .com bust. I had been out of work. I can't remember if Madison was on the way or had just arrived, but I had been out of work, and fortunately I got a job at KPMG running the Customs Info group. And I don't know if you remember Sarbanes-Oxley, but there were a lot of legal changes, and the big accounting firms decided they weren't going to do a lot of the consulting or any of the affiliated services. So they decided to sell Customs Info. So we scraped up some investors, some local investors, bought Customs Info, And really, it was kind of an easy strategic thought, because all we did at the time was U.S. and Canadian data, and the thought was, hey, let's make this global. So we had, and by that time, this was the first few months, we'd started to reach out to foreign governments. We started to collect foreign tariffs. I had a guy in the Philippines that would ride his bicycle down to the customs shop, take a bunch of Philippine nickels with him, make Xerox copies of the tariff, ride his bicycle back to his apartment, scan the tariff, and then email it back to us. And one more story, and then I'll stop in regards to the international data. But I called the customs director of Yemen one time, and he actually picked up the phone. And I said, I would like to buy your tariff. And he said, hey, no problem. But today I'm driving my taxi. I'll have to call you back tomorrow, which he did.
Oh, wow.
But ultimately, we were able to collect all those the tariffs from 170 some countries. And by the time we sold in 2014, we were the largest provider of trade content for SAP and Oracle. And that was kind of our claim to fame.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I know when I was at PSI Software, that's the company that I started with and accidentally got into trade that way. But I remember clients coming to us and saying, is there a better or faster way to just get because of course our Mexican customs compliance software and our NAFTA software did not really come with the tariff, the HTS at all. And so they were asking, is there a way that we can upload this? Or I guess back then there was no real view or sense of uploading, but how can we load it? Can we preload the database? I guess that was their question. It's like, no. So we went looking around, and I guess at one point we might have ran into you all at must have been ICPA. I don't know how else I would have found you all, but then we started interfacing directly to your y'all software, and then Jolie and I guess worked on or tried to work on a few deals. So Jolie, how did you get in? I guess by default.
Trade by accident, possibly. I was running a large auditing firm in downtown Salt Lake that we were dealing with big data. That was really our specialty, was to really get in and grind that data. And we had developed our own proprietary software in order to do this. And it ended up being a really good fit. I mean, I'll tag on to what Ron said. A lot of customs info at the time was on CD-ROM, and that's what the attorneys really loved because they could sit on an airplane when they're traveling to clients' offices, keyword search, do their work. And that was before the internet was so prevalent on airplanes. And again, we were doing mostly import. So I came on right when we purchased Customs Info. We were fortunate enough to grab a few of our really rock star players out of the data space and brought them over. And as we expanded globally, and maybe to tag on to what Ron was saying, I think one of the interesting things that happened was the economy at that point in time when we first bought Customs Info was in a difficult situation, and the dollar value had dropped tremendously. So all of a sudden we became more of an export country. And so we saw that opportunity where we had to go out and say, you know what, we need to be bigger than imports. We've got to get this information around the globe in order to support companies that are really trying to export to all of these other countries. And Ron did a great job of making a key acquisition for us with a company out of Canada. And that enabled us to start really moving in that, 180, 190 countries, moving tariffs. And with the data team that we brought over, still the countries that were doing everything in paper, we had skill sets to data lift, OCR, start really managing large scale data sets and showing people how they could keyword search. I mean, I remember walking into somebody's office. I did a lot of work in Europe, especially with SAP and those clients, but walking into somebody's office and they literally just had stacks and stacks of paper. And, they're looking through rulings, they're looking through tariffs, and then to be able to show them how you can quickly keyword search across tariffs. I mean, their eyes basically kind of popped out of their head on how much more efficient they could actually be. So yeah, I came over from the data world, the data auditing world.
So that kind of like almost just like naturally came to you how they meshed. I mean, by coincidence, I guess it just meshed together, which is pretty cool. And because of all the data, and we're handling a lot of data. I remember there was a Mexican company. I don't know if y'all partnered with them, or I am trying to remember again. My memory is failing me here a little bit, but I remember that they were like, I don't know how you can even keep up. We can't even do the Mexican part just alone. And these folks have like so many. And anyway, I do remember, like a little bit about that. And because we needed the Mexican tariff, I remember, because of course our Mexican customs software. So, but anyway, so yeah. And folks, we have Andy now on the show. Sorry, Andy, about the miscommunication there, but glad you can join us because I know you know these folks. You don't know Maddie yet, Madison, but just so you know, Madison is Ron and Jolie's daughter, who just recently came into the trade world not too long ago, and I met her at ICPA over in Orlando.
Well, good to meet you. I will say, your folks are phenomenal. They are just, and Ron's one of those guys that's going to forget more than I get to learn. So, it's like, well, I got a question, Ron. You had, I thought, with Customs Info and in the company and the way that you guys were handling things, and it was just a phenomenal product. There's no question about it. But obviously, you didn't do it on your own. So, as far as when you step into obviously leading a company in that kind of a realm, was there what would you say for somebody that's coming up through the ranks and maybe thinking about taking on a company or has a company and it's now beginning to mushroom, the leadership skills in trying to balance out, your work life? Obviously, there are times that you're putting in lots of hours, but how do you motivate your folks? Or how do you keep them focused? How do you, what do you look at, and how do you keep yourself focused?
That's a broad question, but I have thought about that a lot. In the early days, Andy, it was just mere survival, right? I mean, KPMG was going to sell, and I was most likely going to be out of a job. So that was the motivation I basically, bought my job. But let's get to the second half of your question. We had just a phenomenal team of human beings. And if you look at just from a budget standpoint, from a healthcare and insurance and bonuses and anything we could do, to share that success, we did. And we were very, very hands-on. Jolie and I, that was our 24/7. That was our life. And we would start with folks that knew nothing about trade. And as you guys know, it's a very complex world, right? And we would tell these folks, hey, this is going to take you a year to figure out. You're going to be absolutely lost and clueless for a year, but we're going to hold your hand. We'll get you through it. And as Madison was saying earlier, once the light bulb goes on in trade and you realize that, one, it's a great space full of great people. Two, it's very challenging globally. And three, over the course of a career, it's very rewarding. We were able to create a team that I think was very involved, and they got better and better. And as a founder and executive, it's a lot of fun when your folks that work for you, when they become the expert. That's when you are a successful founder and executive is when the folks that work for you become the experts.
Well, you guys were always so fantastic, Jolie. I mean, I'm telling you, you were so professional, but you had such a passion. And I'll never forget. I mean, you always represented your company fantastically, and but you weren't stiff shirts. You guys, y'all were. It was like easily to approach. I love dealing with y'all more than anybody at those conferences. And I'll tell you a story in just a minute. But Jolie, you started to say something. And obviously, I can sit there and talk the horns off a billy goat in a New York second. So let me shut up.
No, I was just going to add on to a couple of things that Ron was touching on, and you asked how you keep people motivated, and one of the things that happened early on is, and I mentioned this earlier, that we were able to swipe over a few really key people from my old auditing firm that really knew big data really well. And one of those guys, and I won't say names, was just an avid skier. If he wasn't out on a powder day, it was going to probably be a problem. And so I think we decided to buy him a season pass and say, hey, we know you're going to be working your tail off, lots and lots of extended hours, but when the powder's coming into Utah, go. Like, we made sure that he was out of the office on those days so that he could come back in and focus and get that stuff done. And the other part that I was going to mention is, and Madison can attest to this, but, Ron and I spent a lot of time overseas, working with partners, working with companies, trying to get the data integrated into software solutions. And when we had extended trips, and sometimes it would be me going over, and sometimes it would be him going over, sometimes it would be both of us. And if it was both of us, the kids were in tow. So Madison and our younger daughter, Morgan, were getting drugged through the trade sling, around the world and making sure that we still had family time. And, it was one of those businesses where you worked hard all day. You took your gap in the evening to make sure the family was intact. You're doing everything that you want to do. And then, the computer comes back on at 10 o'clock at night, and it came back on again at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, depending on where you were talking around the globe. But I think one of the really big benefits to having a company like that was you could shut down when you needed to, and you could control your own schedule. I mean, we kind of joke that we were remote before remote became, a topic. And, we had such a great team of people that we knew we could count on them. There wasn't any of this question of, are they really working? Because everybody there was excited about the industry, and they just worked so hard that you knew you could trust them to take care of everything that needed to be done.
Well, Madison, as being drugged through all over the different countries and different things like that, and as you're growing up, you saw, I'm sure, firsthand how hard your folks were working and the way they schedule things. You probably at the time is like it was just life, but now as an adult looking back, the way they prioritize schedules and work things in, did you glean from that? Have you learned a lot and have an appreciation for what they've done?
Yeah, I definitely have an appreciation for how much they traveled, because I'm starting to travel for work now, and it's definitely a lot. But it's funny because now looking back, it really has rubbed off on me. I feel like growing up, we spent a lot of time traveling, a lot of time outdoors. Most of my childhood was spent outdoors. And then the other half was all of us working, going to school, sports, that kind of thing. But now, as I'm out of the house and in my 20s and living with roommates and watching other people around me, I am definitely in go, go, go mode all the time. Working all the time. I get home from work. Or I guess I work remotely, but I'm done with work and I'll have some free time, spend some time outside, and then I'm back to work, working on work that I have to do from Blue Tiger, which is where I work now, or other side projects. So it's definitely ingrained to me that you don't stop because there's always something to be done. And I am grateful for that work ethic and also the balance of traveling and living outside, that sort of thing.
Madison, whenever you get home with your folks, do you ever start talking about some topics and push back on them a little bit?
Yeah, I would say now after After finishing my customs broker exam and passing that, man, there's just so much information, and you really get into the tariffs and the regulations. So yeah, with that stuff for sure, because I think, especially when I was in the thick of that, it was easy to talk about the topics, and I had the regulations right in front of me. So yeah, it's been fun to be able to chit chat and actually participate in these conversations, because growing up, I had no idea what they were talking about. So
yeah, Andy, one of another thing I'm very proud of is, Jolie and I, we ran Customs Info for over 10 years and together, and we're still married. I mean, that by itself is a very, very positive and probably rare thing.
Yeah, my wife and I are in our 17th year and running it together, and we're still together. So I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's hard to remove it from the dinner table talk, as Madison can attest. You really have to figure out how to cut that off. But Andy and Lalo, I was going to tell you one quick story. For years, and you can see that I still keep my maiden name in everything that I do. But for years, that was intentional, because when we first bought Customs Info and started growing it, we really didn't want anyone to think that Customs Info was just like a little mom and pop shop, and which sometimes can be the impression when you're walking around with the same last name. So for years, we didn't hide it, but we never told anyone that we were married. But we were it probably was ICPA or AAEI or someplace. And one of our clients saw us go into the same hotel room together. And then we thought, well, now there's going to be rumors. So we ended up having to tell a few people, hey, just FYI, we've been married like forever. There's not an affair going on. I'm not walking into his hotel room.
It's like, oh.
Remember that discount I asked you for?
Right, yes, exactly. Little blackmail action.
Well, Jolie, you were talking earlier about how you said that you were remote before remote was cool or whatever, but and my wife and I feel the same way, because we brought webinars to our business way before the pandemic even hit. And then all of a sudden what we're doing now is normal, right? But Ron, how do you feel, or how do you think, like with today's technology, how things may have been different with Customs Info? I mean, do you think y'all would have had more acceleration? I mean, how do you see
AI
that
aspect of it?
That's a great question. And the reason I love it is because if we tried to start that from scratch today, one, there's more competition, but two, back then, it was a very difficult thing to do. I mean, as I was saying earlier, you were writing letters, old fashioned, I'd put an address down to Iraq or Iran, and I'd send off a letter, and sometimes they'd respond. And it was very much a Boy Scout environment where you just had to figure out one way or another that you were going to get that data. And today, so much of that data is in the cloud, right? It's easier to get. The barriers to entry are low. But in 2002, the barriers to entry were very high. And I'm kind of thankful that we were able to do it at that time, because I don't know that we could separate ourselves from the rest of the pack, in 2025.
I will tell you this, though, there's probably easier access to a lot of information. But one of the things, and Madison, this may, you may provide some comment here. There's a lot of people who've been in the industry, they're older than dirt, like your father there. So, of course, not me, right? Seriously, it's like, but you've been around, you picked up on something that most college kids don't. And you were saying how that professor that is like, they may not have taught before, but you look beyond that and could tell there's a rich history of knowledge, experiences, and things of that nature. One of the things I see in today's world is there are such great innovations of some new systems, and they're using applications or developing applications for, everything from automated duty drawback, classification, all these things. But one of the things that I see lacking is tapping into somebody that's got that experience. So you look at all this data, and to be able to literally analyze it from a perspective, the experiences give you the knowledge of knowing what to ask and how to tap that data, rather than saying, well, I've got this data, let me do trend analysis along. Do you see that from your perspective of, there's so much information that there's a lot of people that really don't even understand how to use it?
Yeah, I think that what I'm seeing is because right now in the work that I'm doing, I see a lot of customers come in and they're like, oh, these are the regulations that I'm seeing, or I use ChatGPT to look this up. Or I've looked at a couple of the AI softwares for classification. And here's the thing is it's giving you great information. And a lot of the times it does look correct. It is giving you the correct regulations, but sorry, I shouldn't say correct regulations. But it's probably not pulling from the right area. So it's correct information, but for you're asking, if that makes sense. But if you don't know that that's wrong, or if you don't have that prior knowledge that that's wrong, you are going to go ahead and move forward with that. And so I think, we're going to have all these great AI software to pull this data from. But if you don't know what you're looking at, you can get yourself into trouble really quickly.
Well, you've got a resource with your folks, I imagine, and Jolie, I guess you guys, as you're talking, like you said, at times around the dinner table in the past is one thing, but even now it's like, do you not get engaged in discussions and say, well, how's it going? What's going on? Have you thought about, and you start from obviously your vast experiences and things, giving some guidance even to Madison or others? Hey, look at it from this perspective or that perspective. Does that ever come up?
Yeah, I'll take this one because it's an ongoing debate, and this debate really has been happening for decades. But you guys have been in the space long enough to remember that, pre-2000, the rule was only customs brokers can make those decisions, right? And then the Amazons come and they're moving tens of millions of goods. And it's just not realistic that a human being, no offense, Madison, it's just not realistic that a broker looks at each and every product for the volume that was happening. Remember, global trade was just skyrocketing in the early 2000s. So we have this ongoing debate, the broker versus the business, and we still have to keep the goods moving, and it was just a few months ago, Madison and I were having this debate, and the thought is she's exactly right. The brokers and the trade professionals and the attorneys, they know the final answer, and you must check with them. But what happens in 10 years when there's 1 million computers that all say it's the same classification, right? And at what point do we as humans say, well, 1 million computers can't be wrong, so it's got to be that? But that's going to be a debate that we're gonna face over the next decade.
The thing is the regulations are made up by humans, and the issue with the HTS codes is they are somewhat subjective they're somewhat subjective. Like, there can be two codes where you're going in one direction or the other. And here's the thing is we get them wrong all the time. That happens. But as long as you're practicing reasonable care, then you can adjust. And that's why we have post-correction summaries. That's why we do all that stuff. But the thing.
Well, let me offer this. Is being able to, whatever, even if the computers come back with certain things, and I understand that, if you can, and this is where I see some people fail, they'll take whatever has been given you. Oh, the research says this, bang, and let me run with it. And it's like, you need to understand, can you defend that? What is the, I'm taking this based on what? And that right there I think maybe where you were going.
Yes, that's where I was going is using your AI system taking reasonable care.
Mm-hmm. Not by itself. That's a great point.
Well, humans are training that AI. And so at some point you've got to make sure that it's right. And I think, Madison, like you said, you've got to still put in reasonable care. And especially with the additional, I don't even know if I want to call it regulations, but the government is going to make sure that your tariffs are correct. And it sounds like, I think I saw your podcast a couple days ago that said it's the number 2 initiative of the DOJ
for
to
fraud.
Make sure that your classification is correct and that there's not anything going sideways, which I actually, that kind of brought it to a forefront for me, thinking, okay, so where does that put AI? It is a critical piece of it, but you've got to have brokers in the process to make sure that you are not going to get yourself in trouble.
No, and I agree. I do use some systems where it helps me narrow down to 4 codes, and then I investigate from there. And that does save a ton of time, but it's definitely not going to give you 100% accuracy. That's for sure.
Let's go full circle now. So we saw you at ICPA. You were looking for a job. I just want to bring this up because your mom was amazing and your dad were both, of course, Tim, we know, were amazing at this, and that was networking. So they networked the heck out of it, and that's why they grew their company that was so successful. So you obviously learned something from that because so you were networking at ICPA. I saw you talking to so many people. So that resulted in a job, right?
Yeah. So I ended up leaving Descartes end of last year, and I was told over and over again, do not leave a job unless you have another job lined up.
Right.
And I ended up leaving, and but the thing is I wouldn't have gone to ICPA if I had still had a job. I wouldn't have had time. Anyway, so I went to ICPA. I did a lot of networking. My mom was amazing. She's been a great mentor. Going back to your question, Andy, I ask her, I'm messaging her every day for questions and advice and everything. And my dad too. But for ICPA, yeah, my mom was going to go, and I decided to go, and I pitched to almost every single company, hey, I'm looking for a job. And a lot of people were taken aback, like, oh, you're not a client, you're not a prospect, you're not looking to just network. I was like, I want a job. So I ended up meeting my now employers. I work for Blue Tiger International, which is, I'm so happy. They're such a great company. And yeah, amazing. So I definitely think that you got to close some doors to have others open. And so, yeah, my biggest advice for people who are looking for a job or are really scared to leave their job to look for something new is getting in front of people and not being scared to close one door, because that opportunity wouldn't have arisen if I had it. And now I've learned. I've been at Blue Tiger for 3 months, and I have learned so much. It's incredible, and they're an incredible company.
And that was probably Ron and me saying, don't leave before you have another job.
Well, I get it. That's the way. That's the way.
As parents, I would be doing the same thing.
Yep. But I right. I was super. I mean, from a parental point of view, and I'll say this personally, I was just so impressed with Madison's ability to go out there and network, because getting a job right now through, sending out resumes and just trying to talk to people, is a very difficult time. And watching her go through and talk to every single booth, meet as many people as she possibly could. That was just one of those proud parental moments where I was in sessions and I was in there, just trying to figure out exactly what was going on with USMCA, with everything taking place. And then I'd walk out and she's talking to more people. And so, from my perspective, I was just really happy to see that. And she did walk out of there with really great contacts, and knowing people in this space is so key, because all of us have been together for many years now. And I just think it's a tight knit group in the trade space. So that was fun for me to watch and see.
And landed you on the show too, so.
Oh yeah,
right.
going to ICPA was such a good call. I mean, I have contacts that I reach out to now for clients that I'm working with at Blue Tiger from. I mean, yeah. Anytime you can get in front of someone, it's a good idea.
Well, Ron, Jolie, Madison, y'all have been absolutely fantastic. Ron, I gotta say, it's y'all's family has a legacy. You're so fantastic. You guys met, so many different people, and you are very, very well respected in the industry. And you lucky dog, you worked hard and sold the company. And, I'm wondering just like, what are you doing to keep yourself, from getting bored?
So I'm currently at WiseTech helping them to increase their compliance offerings in the marketplace. And it's a great company, great leadership, and it's a lot of fun. And if you want to do big things, you got to be on a big platform, right? And WiseTech's one of the biggest on the globe. So my team, Madison mentioned Cypress, my team and I are super excited and happy to be at WiseTech, helping that move forward from a compliance standpoint.
Y'all, I tell you what, that's encouraging, because I would hate for your phenomenal leadership and abilities to be, stagnated. So it's like, applying it. It's good to know. So, hey, all of y'all are so fantastic. I hope we can do this again too, because I will say it's been an honor getting to meet with y'all and talk with y'all again. And Ron, I'll tell you, I've just, again, you and Jolie both, I've had such phenomenal respect for and what you've been able to accomplish. But and Madison, man, you definitely have come from good stock. There's no question there. But the other is, there's no doubt you're making your parents very proud, but continuing the legacy of the Lackey family, excuse me. So anyway, thank you so much for y'all being on our show. Hey folks, one thing is, I will say, share, continue to promote our show. You guys have been fantastic. And listen, if you have any stories about the Lackey family here, let us know, because we'd feed them back to them. That is like some stories of how they have helped out. It's like, we've opened up a can of worms. And I'm telling you, yeah, I'd love to see those skeletons and come back to Ron.
This was probably a great kickoff to a story building type episodes, because we just get bored sometimes hearing about tariffs and trades and stacking and unstacking, and which that's what Madison is dealing with daily. So this I know is going to really resonate well with a lot of people, because a lot of our listeners are, I'm not going to say they're our age, but they remember and they did use customs info, and now they know the story behind the business. So it's really awesome to hear it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And the respect is mutual. It's really great to see both of you again. Really great people to know throughout the years. Thank you.
Hope you all have a good one, too. Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.